So who here has actually looked at or gone into investing in the US, other than those of you who are already living in the US, by a show of hands? So I can see you. I can still see you. Okay, one, two hands so far. Like I said, I'm not able to see everybody at the moment. Okay, that's pretty cool. 3 hands. Awesome. And so again, the idea here is, though, I know most of us in this room tonight are Canadians. Okay, most of us are Canadians here. And so what that means, typically speaking, is that as Canadians, we're always thinking, oh, wow, you know what? In the US, there's way more markets, way more opportunities. There are still markets where you can pick up properties for $30,000, $50,000 a pop before you go through the BRRRR process. So it's amazing. At the same time, though, we always said, good deals can be found, great deals are created, and it doesn't matter where you go. So it has nothing to do with the market, has nothing to do with the country. Am I going to disagree with the fact that their economy is much, much larger? Therein lies a lot more opportunities? No. At the same time, though, remember, great deals are created. And so this is also why, I mean, the funny thing is I haven't really thought about it this way in a very long time. However, ever since Multifamily Conference, I've had so many people reach back out to me and said, wow, you know what, I really like the way you think and how you approach structuring your deals. And I've had students that actually mentioned that to me over the years as well. And I guess it's because I've been doing this for so long now, it's become a bit of a second nature that I kind of took it for granted until you guys reminded me of maybe some of the experiences that I have even forgot that I had. And so I'm very, very blessed and happy to be sharing this once again. And there's a lot of details in this particular deal. And some of you may remember me saying this. It took me 14 months to do one deal. However, this was not a development project. If it's a development project, 14 months is short, okay? It was pure acquisition. It was literally pure acquisition. And so what that means is, from an acquisition standpoint, it is actually quite a bit of time, because most multifamilies, you probably learned, depending on the size and the scale of the deal, it probably takes you anywhere from a month to 6 months to close. Okay, a typical multifamily, regardless of regardless of scale. And so right here, I always have to do this before I really get going, is I'm not here, and my team and I got some support here tonight, are not here as financial advisors or accountants, or I'm not even a tax advisor. I had to hire and, really, for the lack of better words, pay for all these people to support me. However, to me, this is probably one of the most exciting things about being an educated investor, is the fact that you don't have to be jack of all trades. You can really focus on learning how money works with the asset class that you have chosen to go into. And in this particular case, it is real estate. And so, again, the point here is, though, I want to share with you exactly what I mean by putting my investor's hat on, which is really figure out how to put money to work and make it work a lot harder than I work. Is that fair to everybody? Yes? Awesome. And so with that said, to me, being an educated investor is likely the most powerful position to be in, because we get to learn and actually leverage other people's knowledge, other people's time, their expertise, okay, and other people's money. And this is also why today's deal, again, I've overlooked it for so many years. And when I was trying to come up with a topic to share at the Multifamily Conference, I kind of thought this was my very first deal. And I'm just gonna, talk about it and see how it goes. And I guess the response has been pretty decent. Now, ever since then, though, so many people have reached out and go, all right, so I know you guys had a booth there. I talked to some of you, you had a different vibe, but what are you guys really about? Because, unlike everybody else, you weren't there to like hard press us into buying anything. And like your booth is always filled with people and people coming over to chat. And I always have my whiteboard with me in case you haven't noticed, because in every chance that I get to share and hopefully add value to your journey as an investor, whether you're new or experienced, I will take it, because that is my personal mandate for myself these days. And so a lot of you have been asking, who is TYT? And so I'm just going to take a quick minute to share this with you, is that we are an academy that focuses on financial education and education only. So what that means is we're not a buying group. The goal with Trust Your Talent is to help everybody create their level of financial independence. And we do it one person at a time. And the time frame typically is from 2 to 5 years. We're not here to promise you that you're going to do great big deals next month, because that's not what this is about. We, above all else, value longevity as a successful investor. And we also value momentum over speed, because we're talking about money making money. Okay, has anybody heard of the phrase that the eighth wonder of the world? Do you know what that is? It's compound interest. So time is still a factor. Okay, there's 7 wonders in the world that you can physically fly to and visit. However, again, we are here to build long-term sustainable successes. When it comes to money, I'm hoping that this is what you all want. Yes or yes? Okay. Short-term successes might be great. However, if you're not able to keep it, or you don't have enough financial intelligence to hang on to it, I don't know how much that really matters. And also, we are the only education company that is made in Canada and the US. What we mean by that is we have North America, if not the world's largest real estate investing curriculum and education team. I know not a lot of people know about this. However, we have currently already at 16 different courses on real estate investing alone. And every course is anywhere between 12 to 24 hours in length. So this is not about get rich quick. This is not about a weekend course or a 90-day or 5-day challenge. This is about really fundamentally building you up so that you can be a sustainable and successful investor for life. Okay. And also, we do deliver our curriculum and our training in multiple different languages, just because the team that we have. I'm not a one-man show. You might see my face a lot more than the rest of my team. However, for those of you who are already in the community, you understand that we have a whole team. This is a business. We have systems and processes. And remember, it's not jack of all trades, okay? Because when you're a jack of all trades, guess what? Most of the times, you're a master of none. So the only thing we're getting good at is learning how money works and leveraging real estate investing as our asset class. And as I mentioned, this is our mission statement. And again, it has nothing to do with helping you buy doors. Okay, buying properties is the easiest part in the entire calculations. By show of hands, who here has already purchased properties and call yourself an investor? Quite a few hands have gone up. Yeah. Okay, would you agree that buying is actually the easiest part? It's the managing, it's building the process, it's making sure that it continues to perform and you get sustainable performance and equity gain at all turns. Yes, absolutely. And this is why it's not get rich quick. However, when you do it right, it is get rich for sure. And so on that note, all coaches, trainers, and mentors walk the walk. And earlier when I said we're education only, it means that every single coach, trainer, and mentor on the team, we are all financial independent or financially free. And it also means that there is no conflict of interest. We will not come to you as trainers, mentors, and coaches to ask you for money to invest in our deals. Because to me, that is a huge conflict of interest in the world of investing. And in my opinion, most investors, as we are building our portfolio, our database, accessing other people's money, to me, education marketing is the new world that we are in. So I personally don't believe that you got to pay for somebody else to train you only for you to pay them more money to get into their deals with them. And this is also not a multi-level marketing kind of structure. So nobody, not even your mentor, is going to take money from your deals. That's not how this works. We're education only. It's a training academy, which means the only fees that you will be investing in will be your tuition, okay? And last but not least, we always say that this is a full immersion. As I mentioned earlier, it's a 1 to 2 year process. I mean, by show of hands, how many immigrants are here? And by immigrants, I simply mean that English was not your first language, like me, okay? I can see quite a few, about half the room. And so if you've gone through that process like I have, you understand that you don't just all of a sudden land in Canada or land in the US and you get to speak English fluently and get to do business and go to school and get A's. You know, it takes some time for you to really get yourself fully immersed. And once again, learning the alphabets, learning the language is one thing. To be able to be 100% functioning, that's also a whole other thing. And the way I look at, and the whole Trust Your Talent Academy team looks at, learning how to invest and becoming the most well-rounded investor is the same type of journey. It does take time. However, it will pay off. And that's why one of my favorite quotes these days really is by Bill Gates. And he says that most of us overestimate what we can do in 1 year. And yet we underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. And so I just want to take this opportunity to really share with you, just because I know a lot of you guys have been messaging me and talking to the strategy coaches. So I just want to take this opportunity to really set it up. And also, many of you have also asked, okay, well, I'm starting to see your stuff now. Is there a place where I can go so I can get completely plugged in with Trust Your Talent? Yes, if you just take up your phone and scan the QR code right now, best gift from COVID lockdowns, right? So if you just don't pick up your phone and scan the QR code, you will never miss a beat. You will never miss an event. And for those of you who have not, and if you're in the GTA and have not checked out our workshop yet, make sure you do that, okay? Make sure you do that. Space is limited because we are building ourselves to be the Harvard of financial education. What that means is we only take 60 to 80 new students on an annual basis, because at the end of the day, it's not about how many students we take in. It's about how many results we are creating for every single person. And it's results first and foremost, okay? And so again, this is the first step. If you want to get started on your journey, make sure you get yourself registered and come to the next boot camp in about 2.5 weeks now. And also we have some live events where we get together, you know, network, share, break bread, that sort of thing. So we call them TYT Connects. The next one is happening on Saturday, July 15th. And we also have one scheduled for Vancouver right now on August 26th. And on that note, there's lots and lots of webinars coming your way. There's one that's happening not this weekend because it's Canada Day long weekend. So we're going to celebrate our nation's birthday. However, the next Saturday, we continue on. And as you can see, you're not going to find another academy that pushes financial education as hard as we do, because this is what we live and breathe every day as real estate investors ourselves. And this is our true passion. And so with that said, last but not least, there's also one last seminar before summer really hits, and that's July 11th. So for those of you who are wondering where to start, you have so many different options. So I'm just going to say one more time where to start. Scan the QR code and follow Trust Your Talent on Eventbrite so that you get the updates. Every time there's a new event coming up, you get the updates automatically sent to your inbox. So on that note, here is the deal. And a lot of you may have even already gotten the slides. And if you're very proud, because I've gotten a lot of questions already via direct messaging over the last few weeks from some of you guys, because you've come through the presentation and you got questions already. So I've already pre-answered some of those. However, for those of you who actually didn't get to see this presentation last month, or actually I was invited to speak at the Right Club in Ontario, but it was a national event via Zoom as well last week. And I also got to share about this deal too. And so just to catch everybody up, a quick summary is how I used what I call rolling options to acquire my very first deal. And this is exactly 10 years ago now at this point, a 144 unit mobile home park with 100% other people's inactive and underutilized money. So I always like to throw that out. I know we've all heard of OPM. However, I want to stretch your brains a little bit every turn I can, like I said. Other people's inactive and underutilized money. And I'm going to add another tidbit here. At this point in time, 10 years ago, I did not have access to American money, which means every single dollar that I raised to go into this deal back then, well, they were all Canadian investors and Canadian dollars, okay? And to date, this was still one of the largest deal okay, in my career in terms of one single unit count, 144. And so again, everybody can have different stories. Some people have gotten, way more than that. To me, as I mentioned, it doesn't matter. I know people from traveling around the world to teach financial education and to teach real estate investing the last almost decade now. And I've come across people that literally own thousands of properties or doors, and they are still tired every single day and stressed out, because it has nothing to do with the number of doors or properties. It has everything to do with what it's doing for you financially. And so this is also the focus of my share on this case study, is how I was making money throughout the entire journey. I know one of the biggest questions has been, why the heck did you sell it if the deal was so great and you've already made money from it? And so I'll answer that tonight too. And last but not least, this really was the deal that solidified my confidence competence loop as an educated investor, because I had to apply so many lessons. I had to apply so many lessons that I've learned leading up to that point that felt like just theoretical into this deal. And they're so important that I kind of feel like I need to share this with you. However, again, going through this entire journey during that 14 months, it was not the easiest thing. Like, if this was your deal, how would you be feeling? Let me know. Unmute yourself or type it in the chat box. Let me know. Are you feeling a little curious, a little happy, a little nervous, worried? Are you shocked? Were you confident from day one?
Scared and excited all at the same time.
Oh yeah, so was I. I was pretty much, during the 14 months process, I probably felt at different points every single one of those emotions on this little poster here. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a giant deal. Even a small deal, you might be going through the emotional roller coasters already. And so on that note, the lessons are so important that I figure I'll do a quick summary first, okay? There are 10 biggest lessons that I really took away from it. First one's not so much a lesson, but for those of you who actually care, make sure you actually take care of yourself before you embark on a giant deal. What that means is probably get a good routine going, okay? And really solidify your mindset. Or if not, have a mentor, have a community support you in the background so you don't go out of your mind as you're going through it. And teamwork makes the dream work. Why do I say that? I had a mentor and a consultant and partners throughout, and yet I have never, ever seen this property. I have never, ever seen this property. You'll notice that to be a trend about me, because I get super emotional about when I see a property. I start to dream. I'm a dreamer by default, so I start to see possibilities, and because I don't like to admit defeat often. And so my partners have all deemed me to be unfit to be on site more often than not, because then I will overspend, I will over renovate, and I will do things that will not contribute to the bottom line. And so over time, I've really learned to be a spreadsheet investor. And also, because of my past life, I realized that one of my gifts was that I was able to explain things to people and for them to understand it. So one of my skills that I've always brought to the table with my partners has always been raising funds. So that was my role when it comes to this particular deal, whereas my partners were dealing with the day-to-day management of the deal, collecting data, and I would look at and analyze the deals with them as well. And also, number 3, cash flow is better than counting on equity. Rather, cash flow is always better on equity. Okay, cash flow is what keeps the lights on. Cash flow is what pays your bills and what puts food on the table, keeps a roof over your head, pays you for your vacations and the downtime. However, equity is important, and yet this deal really showcased why you need to focus on cash flow more than anything else. And you gotta learn to pay yourselves, okay? And I mean literally, financially, pay yourselves. If you don't understand what that means, later on, I'm going to give you an opportunity to make an appointment with one of the strategy coaches. Because if you're not paying yourself, you're going to grow resentful towards your own business. It's only a matter of time. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And also, an investor focuses on return. Okay, what that means is an investor does not focus on how much something is going to cost them. They focus on how much something is going to make them. And so the last 10 are these. And I'm going to quickly go over this now, and you can read through this, and many of you have already got the presentation. And so you can also request for another copy, the updated copy from tonight too. Just make sure that you email support@trustyourtalent.ca, okay? Email support@trustyourtalent.ca after the presentation. And we're gonna send you a PDF copy of this entire slide deck. And so a quick high level breakdown once again, and I've added some additional information already. So outside of Dallas, Fort Worth, about 60 miles, and it was at a junction between two interstates. And at the time when the deal came across my desk, over 80% of the leases are only paying for lots and utilities, okay? So what is that saying to me as a potential investor? Is that there's tons and tons of opportunities to potentially look at how we can increase revenue, as a result, increase our net operating income, okay? Anybody, if you don't, whenever you don't understand something, again, it's hard for me to see the chat box right now. Make sure you use your emoji or actually unmute yourself or raise your hands physically, because I can see the windows. So physically raise your hand so that I can actually see all of you. If you got questions on maybe a term, a jargon, a lingo that you're not familiar with yet, so that we can keep going. Just expanding my window to see all of you. Okay. And so at this point, not only are 80% of leases that are only paying for lot and utilities, over 55% vacant at the moment already. So more than half of it is not occupied, which means what? We are losing money when we take over. How do we fill those lots? And on top of that, they're expiring leases and non-paying tenants. So can we smell the distressed property that this is? And there's not even a lot of modular homes currently sitting on it that belong to the seller at the moment. It's literally lots and lands and site services, okay? And so at this point, what I found out is there's no major update performed since the current ownership for the last 3 years. And apparently the current owner has been wanting to sell this property on and off for the last 2 years now. He's been listing it, taking it off, listing it, taking it off. Again, a lot of you guys, when you are on this journey, you probably one of the earliest real estate investing fundamental phrases that you've learned is DOM, D-O-M, days on market. And so usually when that happens, you understand that it's signifying something. And that's the fact that the realtor is probably advising the seller to be not seen too desperate, because to the uneducated, untrained eyes or real estate buyers, they actually don't know. Maybe it was listed for about 180 days, but they canceled that listing and relisted it 3 days ago. And all of a sudden, a brand new amateur buyer will go, wow, there's a new listing that's only 3 days old, okay? We found out that it's been on and off for about 2 years. But more importantly, as soon as we got wind of this deal, we wanted to talk to the seller. So educated investors, here's the thing. We work with realtors, we work with wholesalers at the same time. Any opportunity that you get, especially on much, much larger deals, okay? So much larger deals, everybody's got a different number or door counts to it. I'll let you define that for yourself. The point here is, the moment you are able to gain access directly to the seller, regardless of size of the deal, I highly encourage you to do it. I highly encourage you to do it, because this is where you can really speak to them on a human level, and you can find out a lot more about the properties than you otherwise would have. And plus, a good realtor and a good wholesaler, they should be bound by oath or at least a certain level of work ethic and integrity based on the license that they hold, meaning there are things that they are not supposed to be disclosing, okay? And so if you really want to get a good deal, a lot of the times, good deals are found, great deals are created. If you want to make your good deals great, you got to learn how to speak to sellers. So many of you, when you're going to the wholesale and assignment course, you're going to learn about that anyway. And so what I found out, by having access to the seller directly, is literally this guy never ever wanted to inherit this property. And that's what happens a lot of the times, is that a lot of the investors or real estate collectors, they will collect doors and properties, and they just think that, well, I'm going to spend my lifetime paying them off. I'm going to pass it on to my kids so that they can benefit from it, and then they'll have a lot of money. Great. However, in this particular case, I found out that the seller's dad got sick unexpectedly, passed away, and he inherited this. Right off the bat, he actually had to pay a very handsome sum in probate taxes to take it over, because the dad did not actually complete his will nor properly set up a family trust. So this all goes back to asset and income protection, okay? And so the idea behind this is this guy basically in his 40s when he took over, and he's working as a retail store manager. So where in this description have you heard somebody who's money savvy nor an educated real estate investor? Nowhere. And so the thing is, I felt really bad for him, because one of the calls that we had literally was him going, hey, Tim, like, I'm depressed. Like, literally, I'm on antidepressant now. I've been on it for the last 2 years. My wife is about to divorce me. I keep missing my kids' soccer games and basketball games and swimming lessons and my daughter's piano lessons and recitals. Like, my family hates me right now, because every day I get off work, I gotta go on site and get things done. And my property management company, I don't know how to work with them. And it just, bills are piling up. People are quitting on me. I don't know what to do. Whatever it is that you can do it. And so obviously, again, it's not because I was a nice guy to him. It was because of the fact that I was able to show him how we could potentially help as an investor group to help him take over. And so right off the bat, initial steps is we made an offer as quickly as we possibly could. Why? Because this is one of the first lessons that I learned in my financial education journey, which was, actually, it came out as a form of, in the form of a question. Okay, I'm going to ask you that question now too. How much money can you make from the offers you've never made? Big fat zero. Okay, so learn to tie things down. And I know this is where already it stops most people, especially amateurs, because they don't know how to even write an offer. It's probably one of the easiest things that you will learn. And this is why right now, funny enough, we just started our real estate investing fundamental course at TYT. And so you got to learn how to do that, so you're not constantly relying on your team to do it for you. Okay, even though we had a realtor in this particular case, and he did help us write it up, at the same time though, if he wasn't able to turn that around overnight, we were going to write it ourselves. So that's totally fine. And within the offer, we created some of these conditions. Very, very, very simple. So we said it's a 90-day possession traditional offer, okay? And also the fact that we need to ask for income and expenses statements for the last 2 years. These are all fairly standards. For those of you who have taken any sort of basic education on income properties, you understand this is all very basic, okay? And we gave him within 15 calendar days. A lot of the times when we're writing contract, it's all based on business days. In this particular case, we asked for calendar days. And title being conveyed free and clear. Free and clear means that there is no liens or any charges, okay? Meaning at any given point, if it's not him, it's his father, maybe the dad hired an excavation company because he had some plans with certain lots or certain plots within the park. And he hired people to do the work, but then things happened and he didn't pay the bill. And now the contractor is putting a lien against the property. So we wanted the son, who is at the actual seller in this case, to guarantee, okay, to guarantee that at closing, okay? And then the ability to negotiate the price on and all deadlines individually and collectively. And so I'm just going to share this with you now. A lot of you guys know 144 units at this point is actually not one title property. It's a combination of 3 titled parks. And then supporting documents that we provided, okay, in this particular case is our investor resume and track record. And in my investor resume, honestly, when I did this deal, I had only been educated for about 3 years, and really super active by about a year and a half at this point. So of course, in the beginning, and I was 10 years younger, this guy's looking at me going, this kid is talking to me, asking me about a multi-million-dollar deal, and he's Canadian, and he has no idea what it's like to live in Texas. What the heck am I doing? And so it was literally my investor resume and my track record that got his attention. Of course, combine that with some of my partners as well. And mind you, my partners had not been in the industry for more than a decade either at that point. And so it got him curious, because some of you guys know that to date, I am Rich Dad Education's most awarded mentor in history. And so that was my credential back then, because I was Rich Dad Educated. And so he goes, I know that book, and I follow this guy. I listened to his podcast back when podcast was, I think it was YouTube videos. This was 2013, okay, back when podcast was actually hot or popular. And so the fact that I got myself educated held a lot of weight with him for some funny reason. And this is also why I'm highly biased. And so track record, I was able to show him that, yes, this might be a very big deal right now in the millions. However, leading up to this point, I've actually leveraged lease options or rolling options to acquire lots and lots of properties in other markets over the last year and a half alone. And I have reference letters from my investors and from previous sellers who I made these kind of deals with. Okay, so some of you guys, when you go to the Raising Funds course, you've learned that this is your investor binder. Okay, so make sure that you get your investor binder, or this is a part of your portfolio, really. So this really helps when you are negotiating directly in a for sale by owner situation. Okay, and last but not least, we still got a mortgage approval to buy this property. Okay, as a investor group, we collectively fronted and filled out our application to say, this is how much we can actually purchase, and this is our buying power. So him knowing that, he understands that as a seller, as distressed as he may seem, there was going to be a way out with me, one way or another. And it's really, really important, okay? Because again, I'm just curious, by a show of hands right now, who here has seen lawn signs on the roads that says, we buy houses, cash or terms? Okay, so many of you have seen that. And this is what I mean, cash or terms. Seller financing is based on terms, okay? Cash does not mean that you have to come up with all the cash. It just means that the seller at closing walks away with 100% cash. Okay, are we all understanding that? That means they're not carrying a balance with you. They don't have to hold anything. They get to walk away and the deal is done and clean, okay? And so the point is, every time, and I'm going to turn that around quickly, a teachable moment, a shareable moment, really more so, is that even to this date, every time we make an offer to buy a property, I will still make two offers, cash and term, cash and term, okay? And so the funny thing is, because of sharing this deal, I've dug out a lot more examples now over the last few years. So I might do another one and share with everybody a deal that I did in, I coached, actually, I didn't do that one in particular. I coached one of my students to do about 3 years ago in Ottawa when the market was going crazy. And so when the simple income property, even through traditional lending at 2% back then, didn't work, they were going to give up on it. And yet, we proposed and restructured it as a seller financing deal based on creative financing proposals. The numbers worked, everybody's happy. And so again, great deals are created, they're not found. And so at the same time, when the seller is signing the offer and agreeing to all the terms that we're proposing, we are doing due diligence on the other side already. And I want to really stress this. This part costs money. Okay, and so this is why, again, I really fundamentally believe, especially the way we train and the way I train, is that as investors, it's great to go into the multifamily because so many people are sold, just like I was, based on the fact that, oh, the NOI and the cap rate will qualify for the mortgage itself. So don't worry if you've got not enough money and not enough credit. Okay, that all sounds great and all. However, you got to learn how to crawl before you walk. And then you got to learn how to walk properly before you run. Way too many people want to run right off the bat. However, remember, you always got to do due diligence. And the bigger the properties, the lengthier and costlier the due diligence process is. Okay, for those of you who have done bigger deals, can you give me a nod? You understand exactly what I'm saying. It is no longer $500, $600 for appraisal, $500, $600 for inspection. It is all these other fees that you got to dump in right off the bat. Sometimes in the tens of thousands, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then at the end of the day, you might have to walk away. For those of you who don't walk away, usually end up sinking more hundreds of thousands or millions because they got emotional or their ego got the best of them because they are feeling like I've sunk in so much money and time already. I need to get this done. And that is when you actually need a mentor to hold you back and go, no, 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 no. Okay. In this room, I know there are a couple of people like that already. And so again, at the same time, what we're doing is to get comps. So get our CMAs, competitive market analysis, basically valuation. And we are also pulling land titles right away. We're paying for that right away. We don't wait till the conveyancing process with the lawyer, okay? Because technically speaking, I want you to remember this, technically speaking, the moment you have a mutually signed and agree upon a purchase agreement, you can start the conveyancing process. It's just that most of the times, people don't do that step until the very, very end when you know your deal is going to get funded. Okay, which makes sense. However, in this particular case, because you know what, maybe the seller's thinking these guys sound a little too good to be true. We were also thinking, I don't wonder if there's skeletons in the closet. So we better do our own due diligence ourselves too. And so this is all billable hour stuff. And I want to make sure that you understand that. And at the same time, we were speaking to lenders that will lend into that market, that area, and get the local cap rates, as well as debt servicing coverage ratio requirements. And so for some of you who have learned about how to invest in the US, you understand that in the US, one of the biggest things, regardless of the size of the property that they got going on, that in my opinion might be a little bit better than what the Canadians got as investors, is the DSCR loans that are available, okay? So it does change the game. However, does it change the number? We'll go there in a little bit. And so the next thing here is, I highlighted it in green for everybody, is that whenever you're going into any sort of infill, any sort of development, or any sort of larger project, clearly you want to have a longer vision in mind, okay? Many of you understand that my philosophy is I don't care to hold a property for 20, 30 years if it's not performing after 5 or 10 years, okay? My take on it has always been properties are like people. The older we get, the more problems we have, the costlier it is to maintain. And properties are the exact same way. And this is why the IRS, as well as the CRA, allow you to write off capital allowances on an annual basis, okay? If you don't know what that means, again, reach out to a strategy coach after this. The point here is, though, I want to stress, is that we actually learned from the seller directly that his dad was actually going to sell those land to developers moving forward. And so frankly, this is actually one of my answers, one of the questions that you have for me. And my answer is, the goal was not to hang on to the mobile home parks. The goal was to slowly turning each park into apartment and condo complexes. And that was going to be our exit. Because anytime you want to go into larger deals, always go down to the city hall first. Okay, and go down to their city planning, urban planning, whatever they call it these days, pull zoning permits and future planning applications. That information is usually available to the public, especially in the US. Okay, Canadians, if you have no clue in terms of just how public information is, okay, this is your first clue. All those things are very, very, very readily available. These days, even online, straight up, Okay, we have a US course as well, and our trainer, Catherine, teaches everybody how to pull all that information. We can find what your cat's name is even. I'm just kidding. I don't think we can do that. However, that much is available. And so the point here, though, is that we wanted to know whether or not this was going to be compatible with our eventual exit strategy, which was to build and sell. Okay. And turns out, yes. And you got to remember, for those of you, actually, I'm curious, anybody lives in an area where you walk for 3 to 5 minutes and you have transit available, you have a mini strip mall, you have groceries, pharmacies, maybe medical centers all around you. Okay, you kind of live in one of those very self-contained neighborhoods. You know, all those commercial units, thanks for sharing. So all those commercial units, by the time you see it pop up, it was probably approved 3, 5, some even 10 years ago. Okay. And so this is where the advantage is. So this is why I really want to stress on this point here with everybody. And so again, still a breakdown. Now that he's accepted offer, we've done some initial due diligence. We knew we were going to purchase this property. However, at the same time, we were also thinking, we didn't really want to have to sink in 5.4 right off the bat, because as investors, the more deals we can do with the same amount of cash, the better scale we have, the better security we have, and potentially the better cash flow we have. And so we decided to do 3 separate offers. Okay, so 3 separate offers. Let me see if I can see some of the text messages here. There we go. We did 3 separate offers, and basically in this case, it turns into what we call 3 sets of lease options. So if you've never heard of lease options, I will also share, or somebody on my team can probably share. I'm doing videos on a daily basis. It's called My Daily Dose with Tim, and I'm literally on this topic right now. Okay, so make sure you actually join that, and I'll ask one of my teams to put that in the chat box in a little bit as well. And so we used lease options in this particular case as an acquisition strategy, because so many people have heard of lease options as an exit strategy, meaning we use it as rent to own, especially to help people get into home ownership. However, really the origin story of lease option is that it's actually a creative financing acquisition strategy. And so in this particular case, every single option to purchase contract, we also built in an assignment clause. So that will allow me to wholesale it to somebody else. So at the end of the day, because we found this deal, we negotiate on it, we already spend the money on doing this, we wanted to make sure that we have a secondary exit strategy so that regardless of what happens, we are able to still cash out. Okay, so what that means is we're able to make some money rather than nothing at all in the event that we do have to walk away. Because you got to remember about wholesaling or assignment is the fact that while it may not be the best deal for you, it may be an amazing deal for somebody else. Okay, and so for us, I want to go back to the second point in the red there with 3 days of default grace period. What does that mean? Because when you come to lease options, you're going to learn that when the tenant buyer, in this case, defaults on payments, then the contract could be treated as null and void, which means it's going to hurt our ability to do the rolling option and to exercise our option to purchase. However, we all know, especially on bigger deals, there's more complexity, and sometimes for nothing else but banking errors, that maybe you have sent the money and yet they didn't receive it on the other end. You don't want that to be the reason why it kills the deal for you. Okay, and so continuing on, we did propose also option to purchase prices set at current market ARV, after repair value, minus all the identified repairs and upgrades. This was at the end of the day rejected. Okay, it was rejected by the seller's lawyer simply because of the fact that, remember, cash or terms, when we get an agreement to buy on terms from the seller, a lot of the times we will end up paying more than what they're asking for. Okay, we will end up paying more than what they're asking for. And so his lawyer was obviously doing his job. We was just sliding this in to see if we can get some benefits from it. Remember, one of the things that I learned, I want to share this with you all, is ask for all, expect some. Okay? Ask for all, expect some. And so at the end of the day, as investors, we just need to make sure that our numbers work, because in this particular case, as you already know, I have access to other people's money. So it's my job to not only grow that, but to first and foremost protect that too, right? And so this is why I am not embarrassed to ask for any measures that will help me protect the deal and help the deal perform. I just want to share that with you all. And option to purchase one or all three or any combination at any given time within a 60-day period with a written notice. Okay, why? Because a lot of the times, as we already know, if you already own properties or have purchased properties or sold properties, you understand there's a lot of miscellaneous fees that sometimes we forget. Okay, and so in this particular case, we want to let him know that we're not on the hook when we exercise our option to purchase early. Okay, and so that way none of these fees impact our number, our analysis. And then option to decrease purchase price upon final appraisal of financing, he agreed to that. And that kind of makes sense, okay? Otherwise, he's also risking us not being able to fully take over. And so on that note, continuing on, delayed and guaranteed payments. So in this particular case, we said, if we pay you more, okay, if we pay you more than what you're looking for, would you be okay? Would you be okay if we don't pay you on a monthly basis? So it's called deferred payments. And he said, yes. Okay, because remember, at this point, he's not looking at the money. He knows he's going to cash out at some point. He wants to fix his initial problems, which is his life, his time, his relationships. And so at this point, 2 years of monthly payments after title transfers. Okay, and he was okay with that. And then all these little things, I just want to make sure that the red points are mentioned. Seller agrees to completely relinquish management control of any kind. He was more than happy to do that. However, the biggest phrase here I want to emphasize, anytime you go into a seller financing scenario, you want to do power of attorney. Any deal, doesn't matter if it's $300,000 property somewhere in the middle of nowhere versus $100 million, $300 million purchase. As long as there's seller financing involved, you always, this should be a trigger word, okay? Limited power of attorney. Why? Because we've seen so many incidents where people are paying the seller who's carrying seller financing, and yet the seller's not being honest about basically transferring that money into the payments and the debtors that they're supposed to be paying. And then all of a sudden, you get the notice because you now also have a lien on title, okay? In this particular case, your option to purchase agreement will be registered against the title as liens, okay? You'll get notified if he doesn't pay his bills. And then now you're gonna have to go into a legal situation where I got to prove that I pay you all, but then you've already spent the money, you don't have the money. So now that jeopardizes my position. You don't ever want to get into that situation. You want to be very clear upfront about what you're taking care of. Okay. And in this particular case, it's everything. So what that means is all tax bills, all insurance bills, all contracting bills, all utilities, they all come to the new corporate structure and corporation that we've created to hold this deal. Okay. And so this is also why limited power of attorney is so important. Even if you're not leveraging option as your main instrument, and you're using, for example, agreement for sale or a regular mortgage document, power of attorney, please still set it up, okay? And so on that note, seller to guarantee clean titles. And if he's not able to guarantee that, because you never know, sometimes debtors will pop up and pop out of nowhere, okay? Because we don't know how long this deal was going to take. You'll see exactly how long we thought it was going to take, okay? And so, or we pay off and deduct from the final purchase price. So not just whatever it is that we got to pay off, any fees that other people, lenders, debtors are charging, creditors are charging, plus our own time, we will be deducting it directly from the final purchase price as well. Okay. And so how did I find this deal, Yash? It came to me through my network. So it came to me through another investor that I met when I was in the Rich Dad community back then. Okay. And so continuing on, I want to show you the numbers and how it was all structured. As I mentioned, he was asking 5.4 because here's the funny thing. None of you guys have actually asked me this question yet, or maybe I missed it in the chat box, is 5.4 seems a little pricey 10 years ago in Texas. Was anybody thinking that at all? Somebody asked me. Okay, yeah, it was. Because remember, our exit strategy was to actually build it. So what I actually didn't share the first time, because I was only given an hour, it was on somebody else's stage. So tonight I'll be here till the bitter end with you all. I'm just kidding. So we're scheduled for 90 minutes. Now, they were asking for 5.4 because what we found out when we went down to the city planning department, we found out that his dad actually already started the rezoning process, and 2 out of the 3 parks was already rezoned and ready for rebuild. They just a few criteria has to be satisfied for site services. So for us, that was extremely turnkey, which at the end of the day, we still leveraged, even though we didn't get to build what we wanted to build, we still leveraged those qualifications. And that was what actually raised the land value for it, okay? And so the other thing also was the fact that the dad did over time accumulated quite a number of modular homes that he overpaid for. And so again, had we come in with a cash offer, looking back, we probably would have wrapped it up probably around the $4.5 million mark rather than the 5.4 and eventually what I pay 5.9 for. So that's a really, really big gap, okay? At the same time, this is basically what he was asking for. And then had we got access to traditional financing, it would have been a minimum down payment of 35% right off the bat. 35% right off the bat, which means we would have to raise nearly $2 million USD just for down payment, not for anything else yet, okay? And then back then, when Americans were able to get 3.78 to 4.15% for commercial rates, we were getting about 10.5 because no track record yet. My first deal, okay? And our first deal as an investor group. And so that seemed really scary back then when rates were low and when rates were actually going down. However, the saving grace here is that had we gone the traditional buying route, legal fees would have been about $8,000 and due diligence was going to be about $45,000 regardless of which way you go, okay? And so here's the thing. So many people they're going, hang on a second. So this is what you meant, right? If you decide to walk away from this deal, it's $45,000 down the drain, US dollars, plus part of that legal fees. And my answer is yes, okay? So one of the things that I keep stressing with people is please, please, when you have the shiny object syndrome, when it comes to real estate, it's gonna hurt you. Like build your foundation, build your footing. It's okay to start with 1 or 2 small properties because after all, yes, after the entire process, it is literally just zeros and commas, as we always say. However, you really want to get used to that process. It's no different than when I first went to the UK, I basically go, okay, I'm gonna buy small properties so that I can get used to the purchasing process because it's massively different compared to the US and Canada, okay? And then after this, what happened was we proposed because he was gonna allow us and he was going to carry the loan. So we said, how about we do this? On paper, we're gonna buy it. We're gonna buy the first park from you for more than what you're asking for. Second one, exactly what you're asking for. And the last one, very, very little. Kind of like, would you like fries with that order? kind of purchase. Okay. So the reason behind this, for those of you who have gone through any sort of BRRRR process, you probably can see what it is that I was trying to do here already. And so I'm leaving all that here. Okay. Leaving all that here and continuing on. So acquisition expenses. So in addition to due diligence, acquisition expenses, you got to add it all up. Upfront legal costs, instead of $8,000, it was actually $38,000. Okay. And then the best thing that I've done is here, property management company, the new one, to do some door knocking and cold calling with the oil and gas services companies. So a lot of you guys know that I call Edmonton, Alberta home, which means I'm also in an oil and gas heavy based economy. And so Texas is very, very much like that. And that's why the running joke is Alberta is kind of like the Texas of Canada. And in so many ways it is, especially when it comes to real estate investing too. And so my personal experience with lease option before was the fact that even in Edmonton, I was working with quite a few corporate businesses. And so I was able to leverage this particular strategy to help people relocate workers from overseas and help them get into home ownerships. And so that was actually what gave me a little bit of the inspiration and go, okay, we got 144 units and about 55% of them are currently vacant, meaning no active leases on it, meaning no revenue. That sucks. And then they're non-paying tenants and they're expiring leases happening soon. So how do we bring up the revenue? Okay, there's only so much that you can do to budget your expenses. After a while, it's just not going to work anymore. Okay. And so what happened here is we decided, and this took some time for me to find a property management company that had a person that I thought would be a great fit for this, because I had to train this person on how to actually approach these companies to get these corporate contracts. And so he actually became an independent salesperson through that property management company. And he was really happy though, because it was something that was really new and it was challenging for him. And we also budgeted right off the bat $50,000 for eviction and in legal fees and some of the cleanup expenses. The cleanup was easy when it comes to the lots that did not have the modular homes attached to them in this particular case. And hired a mentor who specialized in mobile home parks, because in this particular case, I did not know how to do mobile home parks. I've done BRRRR, I've done negotiations, I've done raising funds, I've done creative financing, I've done lease options, I've worked with property management companies already. However, mobile home park was a brand new asset class within the asset, with a brand new asset type within the asset class that is real estate. Okay. And so honestly, this was one of the best things that we did and we collectively agreed on. And funny enough, it was a mentor / consultant because it was billable hours, like a lawyer, basically. However, the guy was able to be on our speed dial. So every time we had a question about how we can turn over a unit, how we can turn over a lot, or just operations, the property managers are saying stuff like this. Does that make sense? What would you do? That's exactly what we were leveraging the mentor for. And then the delayed monthly payment to the seller. The delayed monthly payment to the seller. I still factor that in, even though we didn't have to pay that out yet until all titles are transferred, if you remember. However, we had the option, we held the option to pay that whenever we wanted. And so next is also cost of borrowing. Always borrow more than you need when you understand how to manage good debt. Always borrow more than you need. This is so crucial. And this is very much an investor mindset and what sets the pros apart from just real estate buyers, okay? Because they will borrow what they think is enough. And it's never just enough, okay? For those of you who have done deals before, I'm sure you agree with me. Nothing ever goes as planned, nothing. Okay, even if you buy a brand new property that's just finished, nothing ever goes as planned when it comes to using it as a rental property. So you always want to budget more. And in this particular case, I also budgeted in the cost of borrowing. And we factor in site improvements because we wanted to resize a few lots based on locations, where it faces the sun and where we can potentially do some lawn service to make different, a different feel and a different look, because so many people, when they think about mobile home parks, what are you thinking? Type in the chat box or mute yourself. What are you thinking? Kind of like a trashy looking trailer park.
Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
there it is.
It ain't that. Some mobile home parks are beautiful, and you would have never known had there not been like a sign that says mobile home parks. Okay. And so in this particular case, between the 3 lots, 2 of the lots actually just look like gated communities. That's the thing. Okay. Because what I later on learned was the fact that the father who passed away was quite paranoid. And so he invested a lot of his money and time and effort to make it look like a gated community because he wanted the security of his own property. And so, and the only lot that was actually not up to par, it kind of looked like a trailer park based on the pictures. And so we knew there were a few things that we wanted to do, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And so we also decided that we were going to rent out 6 module homes, and they are basically your model suite homes, okay, model homes. And we hire professional photographers to come in and do pictures and videos for marketing so that the new property manager can go out there and present this to our corporate clients, okay? So instead of signing 1 lease at a time, we ended up signing 15, 20, 12 leases at a time with each company. And so with that said, we also budgeted for property taxes and surprises, okay? And so here is a quick look at the numbers and structures. So our projected revenue at this point, just from lot rentals alone, okay, because our goal was to basically take over 1 park at a time, not all 3, okay? So this is park 1, which means the seller right now, okay, can still have control. However, remember what I said. We said we have control over all 3 parks from day 1. It's just that I want to be very clear about the fact that the numbers that I am using, that I'm presenting and sharing with you right now, is based on just park 1. Okay, so lot rental revenue projected was $561,600. We were also going to be rezoning and reshaping some of the lots, and we were providing better utilities, and we were charging people for utilities instead, so that we can actually go back to the utilities companies and negotiate for a better rate altogether. It's no different than, say, if you have short-term rentals and quite a few within the same area, you can a lot of the times negotiate with the telecommunication providers, for example, okay? And so mobile home rental, R2R stands for rent to rent. So these days, most people know it as arbitrage, except that we're not doing Airbnb arbitrage. We are doing mobile home, so modular home rent to rent, okay? So what we ended up doing though, was that instead of people bring in their own rundown, dilapidated, ugly, old mobile home parks, we gave them an opportunity to pay a little bit more, and then they go into a newer property, and then they can sell it on their own before they move in, okay? And so from the difference, so this is now revenue, the difference from rent to rent is actually $259,000. So even though I did say projected revenue in this particular line item, it's actually the net income. Okay, this is after factoring in, paying out the other side. And so we also decided to build in on-site laundry. We didn't buy any of the machines. These are all rent to rent as well. And then we added $10,000 give and take. And we also excavated a few areas and repaved it, and we turned them into RV parks because we realized that there's a lot of land that was wasted and that was not used. However, instead of paying the upfront money to do the site service, we basically just paved over them, draw the lines there, put in some plugs, and we are able to offer people to park there. Because remember, even though this is in Texas, once in a while, they still get really cold weathers, and Texans or people that travel south are not used to it. And so for a lot of the RV parkings, and Charles, I know you're in one right now, they don't care about sewage or water, you know, if they're just parking there. They want power, okay? They want power. And We also decided to build a few storage units on site for the residents that have longer term leases. Okay, because what happens is, learning from my experience executing lease options in Alberta, lots of them have a lot of toys. And so instead of making your properties and lawns look really disgusting and really messy and really dirty and a lot of road tracks and tire tracks all the time and dust flying all over the place, we decided to build on-site storage. So this is not like your typical condo storage where it's like what, 5x5 square and 8 feet tall space. These are giant indoor structures. So almost like can self-storage facilities. I want you to think of it that way, okay? So that people can store their toys for themselves. And last but not least, I fought against this for so long, and all my partners wanted to do this because we all learn it from income properties that, hey, if you've got the space to rent out for advertising, that's additional revenue, okay? That's additional revenue. And so from a billboard and signage perspective, I was really not wanting to do this. Remember, 2 of the parks were nice. They did not even look like mobile home parks, because a lot of you guys, I'm guessing you are thinking those wire mesh chain links fences, and it's got like just random looking signs on it, and it makes it look super trashy, right? That was my perspective too. I know I want to make the money, but I didn't want it to look bad. And so what we ended up doing is we all compromised. So I don't know if you've driven by some of those new commercial complexes where you might have Walmart, Home Depot, Starbucks, and other shops all in the same area. So other than their billboards, from the outside, it's what they call architectural guidelines. From the outside, the paint color is the same, the pitch is the same, the design is the same, the stucco is the same, everything looks a little bit more cookie cutter. And so our compromise at that point was, if people want to advertise on our fence, we have our own specs that they need to adhere to. And if they don't want to, or they don't do it, then we don't rent them the space. So that was the compromise. I know my partners were still kicking me a little bit because we could have made way more than just $24,000 a year. However, that was the compromise that we all made. And so actual expenses, property management, we still factor that in because it's based on a percentage. So earlier, the $42,000 for acquisition costs for property management, that was literally just to find somebody new and train them to get corporate contracts, okay? Because what we ended up doing was that we actually kept the existing property management company on site because they really knew the property really well. It's really just the seller that did not understand the property and did not really have a lot of investor mindset or business sense. And so at that point, utilities, legal, and accounting fees, because it's a big project. So based on our calculations, because a lot of the things were actually taken out of the equations already in our acquisition cost, what happens is our NOI calculation looked like this. For us, it was amazing. We're like, wow, okay. We were actually able to do an NOI of $827,000. However, hang on a second, I gotta move a few things on my screen. The lenders always have a different opinion. So again, for those of you who have done larger deals, you probably have experienced this already. Okay, it is never going to come in exactly as you plan, no matter how much due diligence you've done initially. And so in this particular case, during our due diligence process, we already had an idea that it wasn't going to be 100% perfect, like what I show you on the left-hand side. So revenue, they said, okay, even though we've already budgeted in our vacancy, they further discounted. Okay, they further discounted our revenue and factor in additional vacancy count. And this is also why one of the webinars that I've done in the last couple of months is how to stress test your own deals, is the fact that even in Canada, CMHC will give you a number, maybe the different real estate boards will give you the numbers. However, you ultimately have to learn how to stress test your own deals. And so in this particular case, the revenue got cut, our expenses, okay, actually kept about the same because they understood our calculations and it checked out for them. NOI in this case now basically got shaved by nearly $300,000. That's a lot, okay? For some of you who are new into the income property space, getting your NOI shaved off by about 300 grand a year is a lot of money, because that kills your value even at a 10.85% cap rate. Okay, so what that means is originally we actually had a valuation of nearly 7 million. At the end, it came in at about 5.43 based on the lender's market cap rate and their own calculations. And then what happened was, based on the debt servicing coverage ratio requirement that the lenders had at the time, they wanted 1.35. These days, if lenders giving you 1.35, they're probably going to give you a shorter amortization period, okay, or a shorter term, because that means you're making too much money. However, back then, they wanted a 1.35 coverage ratio. These days, I think if you have 1.15 to 1.25, it's considered an amazing deal already. Can anybody vouch for that? Are you doing deals right now? Okay. So it doesn't matter if it's Canada or the US, 1.15 to 1.25, huge. Like, lenders will literally jump on it. They will fight each other for your deal to lend you the money. Okay. However, back then they wanted a 1.35 coverage ratio. And so add the annual rate of 10.5%. That's eventually what we still got. And they gave us, instead of 80% loan to value, they came in at 76% loan to value. I know this is also one of the first times that I've had to learn. What do you mean loan to value is not based on a 5-point deduction? You know, we're so used to 20% down, 25% down, 30% down, 35% down. So we're always fixed to think that loan to value is usually 80%, 75%, or 65%. Doesn't work that way. It's that balance between cap, between NOI, between coverage ratio, and between how much they think you can carry and how safe they think your investment and you are. And so in this case, we were able to pull out about 3.32, okay? 3.832. So let's take a look at the numbers now. Pay Park 1 for 3.6. That's based on our option to purchase price. So in hindsight, we probably should not have overinflated the purchase price for the first park. We were a bit overambitious, thinking that if we could get a $7 million valuation at refi, we could basically exercise our option to purchase all in one go and buy all 3 parks out and be done with it. However, it wasn't the case. So wash, rinse, and repeat. And the beauty about this, though, is that when we did the refi, think about it. We pulled out 3.832. That is net, okay? I've calculated all the fees needed already. You take out 3.6%. We basically each, okay, we had 2 major parties involved, took out $185,000 and put that right back into our pocket, tax-free. At this point, this was about 8 months worth of work. 8 months worth of work, 185,000 US dollars. Okay. I mean, I'm going to be frank. It was still a lot of hours every day. And like I said, you're going to lose sleep and maybe lose some hair. However, it was still really awesome because I was working 80 hours a week at my job. And I was not making that kind of money. And the money that I made was cut in half, simply because I was a T4 employee. So when it comes to asset and income protection and the BRRRR process, this is one of the things that really also gave me the aha moment of why the rich kept getting richer. It's because they really leverage and learn how to leverage debt to build their deals, their portfolios, and their lifestyle. Okay. And then, so total outstanding now for Park 2, Park 3 combined is right here. And so per our option to purchase, I think there was a typo here, but let's keep going. So continuing on, repeat for Park 2 and Park 3, okay? And so the final numbers basically look like this. Ooh, I need to be able to see this. So same cap and same coverage ratio was what the lender eventually gave us. The market value at this point was 1.93. And so refi, instead of 76% now, it went down even more. So we were actually thinking it should go up. It should be going the other direction. You already trusted us and gave us money. Why would it go down? However, they came back and said, well, it's because you're still relatively new, first of all. Second of all, this is still your only first mobile home park, even though it's your second, but it's considered one of the same deals. So we don't know your track record yet, which means we're gonna keep 28% in the deal in case you mismanage it, something happened with the economy, the value drops, they are shielded by the first 28% decrease in value. Okay, and so this is really what deposits or down payments are for. It's there to protect the lenders. It's there to protect the banks. Okay, and that's why anytime you don't come up with more than 20% down in Canada, you are subject to a CMHC or a mortgage insurance. Okay, it is not to protect us, it is to protect them. And so at this point, 1.389 gets pulled out, and part 3, same concept. So part 3 was really amazing simply because, if you remember, we are paying very little for it. So all in all, what's happening here is, I'm gonna close this quickly. Okay, all in all, what's happening here now is part 1, part 2, part 3. The final values, once we were done with the entire BRRRR process. And this is why you'll hear me say BRRRR process over and over again. On that note, I just noticed the time because I did have some tech challenges. Is it okay if we go over by about 15 minutes? Is that okay with everybody? Yeah? Okay. If you have to go, I totally understand. Just remember, email support@trustyourtalent.ca to get access for this recording and the updated slides if you need to, okay? Otherwise, we're probably going to go for another 20 minutes just to wrap this up properly, and then I'll open up for some questions. So part 1, 2, and 3. October 2014, this particular deal landed on my desk in May 2013. And that's why it felt very full circle presenting it last month at MFC, because it literally was 10 years ago when I was on stage talking about it. So total value after about 14 months time is 8.273. So it was valued at about 5.4, and the guy was asking 5.4. In about 14 months, we basically put nearly $3 million US added to the property value. Okay, and we pulled out the money, and we promised the seller that we're going to pay him more. So instead of 5.4, after all is said and done, between all the delay payments and interest that occurred, we ended up paying him roughly 5.9. Just so you know, I am rounding out numbers just so that it's easy to speak to. So 5.9 million is what we ended up paying for. I know some people are going, if you can get away with 5.4, why would you pay 5.9? And that's the thing. It's because of the fact that we are actually, the $500,000 was there to buy us the time and to buy his trust. Okay, and so here's to share with you also the $185,000 that we each got to put away. We also decided to actually give the seller a part of that money too, so that when we refi the first park, he now sees what we call proof of concept. He knows that we're legit, and he knows that we're going to do it again. Okay, so that became a really, really easy buy-in for us to carry this forward. So the first part took the longest because it was also the biggest to do. And we were also doing our own proof of concept to make sure that whatever plans that we plan to do with the lots was going to work. And so, again, the equity created really after all is said and done, like I said, sweat, tears, sleepless nights, and maybe a few strands of hair, was about 2.373. And, you know, at that time, I was freshly, became financially free just about a year prior to that. And I freed up all my time. And that's why I was able to take on something like this. Okay. And this is why we always say time is not money. Time is everything. Okay. And had I not had the time, I probably would not have been able to make this kind of numbers work or make this deal work. Now, throughout the entire process, we were making, after split and everything, okay, we were cash flowing an average of 22,000. That's just my portion. And this was back in 2013. Okay. How big of a difference would $22,000 a month make in your life? Is it big or is it huge? I know for some people it's huge. For me, it was huge. Okay. Even though I was already financially free, it just meant that, I have more options now. Instead of flying economy, I can fly business and first class now. Instead of staying at Airbnbs, I can stay at the Four Seasons now. It's little things like that. Everybody's got different value systems, and got to buy my mom a Mercedes now. Okay, for example, it's just little things. You do whatever you want with your money. There's no judgment here. However, the whole point is my entire philosophy has always been to help people make money. I'm the happiest when people make money. Okay, so, and here's the thing: in 2 years' time, if you remember what happened with the oil and gas industry at the end of 2014. So while we were doing our happy dances in October 2014, some of us were going, all right, I'm pulling out of this deal now. So we paid all of our investors back, all the cash that I raised, we paid all of them back, okay? And some of them that stayed on, about beginning of 2015, they were going, this is not looking too good, because what's happening now? An educated investor is a performance-based investor. And so these parks, same idea. As oil and gas industry started to slow down, we were starting to lose tenants and corporate contracts. So the flip side of that was sometimes we would lose 10 leases at the same time. They were okay to pay a penalty to break it because they had no jobs left. And again, we could not catch up with filling it in with singular leases. And so really we were growing still at a decreasing rate. And what that really meant was our NOI didn't make sense anymore. So we were looking for an exit once again. And so about 6.5 months later, this was a very, very stark contrast. Literally, we went from 8.237 down to 6.2. That's $2 million in value lost. And this is why I always say, okay, because once again, so many people are, drank the Kool-Aid when it comes to multifamily. Yeah, as long as you keep your NOI up, your valuation is going to be there. And again, it does not factor in economic fundamentals and conditions. Okay, during COVID lockdowns, a lot of the multifamily buildings went sideways. And that's also incidentally why that strategy became popular, because there were a lot of distressed sellers during that point in time when people were exiting their leases, when people were losing their jobs, and when people were not paying their rents. Okay, so from my personal opinion, it is not because it was it is the best and most amazing strategy. I love every strategy equally because every strategy does something different to contribute to your financial situation. That's the one thing that most people don't understand when it comes to financial education. This is something that everybody needs to understand and learn, is that every strategy is created equally. It comes down to how and which one you use to build the financial results that you want, okay? And so in 2 years' time, value got cut by about $2 million again. Like, do you think there was a lot of things that we could control? We did everything in our power to fill the leases, to turn over the properties. We did everything we possibly could to keep the performance up, to keep the NOI up. And yet this was happening. So at this point, we decided we're going to sell. And yet at the same time, though, and this is also my personal philosophy, because not everybody will do this. However, I always say, unless I already have another standing accepted offer in sight, every time I liquidate is simply because my property is not performing to my standards. Okay, so I'm exiting. And yet when I'm exiting, I don't need to be selling it based on cash. I will sell it based on seller financing. Okay, for those of you who will be going to create a financing 1 and create a financing 2, it's been updated as well. You're going to learn a lot more about seller financing simply because of the fact that when you can become the bank 100%, a non-performing deal will all of a sudden become a performing deal. And also, I know I'm not a slumlord. That's not the way I was trained nor operate. And so we know that we were selling a quality product. We were putting a quality product onto the market. And so in December 2016, we accepted an offer We sold it based on 90% VTB, which means what? Which means what? At a sale price of 5.2. I know some of you are going, hang on a second. It dropped to 5.2 from 6.25. Yes, it did. Okay. However, you got to remember, this was 100% BRRRR at this point. We got all of our money out and we got to pay all of our investors out. We also got to pocket a few $100,000 while cash flowing more than $22,000 a month. Okay. There was no money lost for us in this particular case. And so we wanted to sell fast. So we sold it at 5.2, even though the appraisal did come back at a little bit higher than that. We sold it at 5.2, but what does that mean right now? The reason why we sold it at 5.2 is because altogether, the loan obligation we've got left now at this point was just shy of 4.6. So at 5.2, we took $520,000 cash, put it back into our pocket, okay, and we sold it at a loss. Is there capital gain? No. So I want you to think about that. So another $260,000 in cash, no tax complications. And for one more year, $4.7 million. We did it interest only at 12%. Can somebody calculate that math? And we don't have any more management pains or headaches. $4.6 million. That is $46,000 a month in interest payment. That's the only thing that we ended up having to pay taxes on for another year. And once they pay it off, that money directly goes to pay down our loans. So that's a wash. So here's the thing, and that's why I said the lessons are so profound that I had to share it up front. It was the fact that number 3, cash flow is better than counting on equity, because had we just counted on equity, this would not have worked, okay? And also borrow more than you need. Always borrow more than you need. And last but not least, okay, even when we were selling, we reached back out to our mentor again as well, is, okay, here is the buyer's qualifications. I mean, even though at that point we were fairly confident, sometimes that's just what you need a mentor for, a second set of eyes to protect you, to give you the green light, okay? And at this point, were there a lot of challenges? Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I do want to share with you is, if you're not familiar with point number 7, okay, I want you to Google it. So currency mean reversion. I want you to understand that. For those of you who are thinking about investing into a different country where there's currency fluctuations, you need to understand mean reversion. Me personally right now, I will still go into the US, okay? Because why? Right now, based on interbank rates, we're at about $1 US to 1.325 Canadian, okay? If you go into the last 5 years, that's probably the average of it. That's why I would still go, okay? However, if you look at the 10-year track record, it's on the high end, which means I would actually be a bit more cautious, okay? So right now, for me to go into the US, it has to be one smoking deal, okay? And so with that said, okay, I shared with everybody earlier, I know there might be questions. I know you're going to be emailing support@trustyourtalent.ca. However, the most immediate support for those of you who have not had a chance to do this yet, make sure that you actually reach out to one of the strategy coaches. This is 100% no obligation. However, remember, this is what we have set ourselves out to achieve and accomplish in the world. Just because you're making a call, it doesn't mean that you're going to become a student, because our coaches are also very strict about the selection process. There are 4 coaches that you can speak to. Pick your favorite one. I don't know. I'm just kidding. They're all great. And so, like I said, every single coach, every single trainer, every single mentor, we are here to teach you how to fish because we're all declared financial independence or financial freedom at this point. Don't want your money, don't need your money for our deals. Okay, we've already learned how to do this, and we just want to make sure that you learn the same thing so you can create long-term successes for yourselves. And so in case you don't know how to get there, I know I have Nina and Vince here. And if you guys want to just drop that link in the chat box for everybody, that'll be awesome. And who here is in a GTA, by the way? Show of hands. GTA. I hope that you are going to, even if you're not in GTA, you can make it, drive, fly. You can go to the next workshop in Toronto, okay? We are going to cover all these things that you see during a 2-day workshop. It's very, very, very intense. However, we want to start building that foundation for you, okay? I know, Amit, you're not exactly in Toronto, but Montreal's not that far either, right? So hopefully we'll see you there. I know you've popped in quite a few times now. Regardless, you know what? As long as you're doing something, we're happy. And the thing is, the journey never ends. We know that there are a lot of students that'll do multiple different programs, no different than myself. Okay, I continue to invest in my own personal growth. I've done Brendan Burchard, I've done Tony Robbins' program, I've done I'm going into Jay Shetty's program, I've done bot practice program, I've done a lot of different programs to just make sure that I continue to grow and evolve as a business person, as an entrepreneur, and as a person, period. And so we know it's not if, it's just a matter of time that TYT will be the next program and the next stop, okay? And so with that said, I want to say a huge thank you for spending time with me tonight, and I'm gonna open it up. I probably have about 4 or 5 minutes, before we got to end all of this as promised. However, I'll stay behind for a little bit longer because I know there was still a lot of information coming your way. So I'm going to open up the floor now. Stop sharing this. And then unmute yourself. It's much easier that way than me having to scroll back to the chat box, if you can. Anyone? Or is my speaker not on? Hang on a second. Or are you all shy?
Well, I'll just say, Tim, that I have been part of the program, but it was very interesting for me to see this deal laid out because it's great to see practical information, especially when you go over a lot of information and go through a lot of classes and you're like, yeah, let's apply this to some real world figures. And it was a great layout. It was very well explained, I find. And like you said, knowing all the terms or even some of them, as I don't know them all by heart yet, it makes it the learning so much more immersive. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Zach. Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people, they think that creative financing is a strategy. Creative financing is a course. To me, creative financing actually is the combination of multiple strategies. Because I think I mentioned this briefly earlier, is that to actually pull it all together, it was really a combination of raising funds, distressed properties, BRRRR process, income properties, multifamily, and also having a mentor, because again, a lot of these strategies, they're all theoretical to a certain degree. It's having the person to come in and help you cook things up. Once you have all that knowledge, that's where it really counts. So it's not just one single strategy, one single market. It doesn't exactly work that way if you want a long career as a profitable and sustainable investor.
Tim, do you mind to share a little bit more, like in what way, like how did your mentor help you back then?
So the funny thing is, the mentor that I had, because as I mentioned earlier, before Treasure Talent, some of you know my track record, I was in a circle, in a community where I had access to a lot of different people with different specialized strategies. And so again, no different than a Trust Your Talent community right now. We have trainers specializing in different strategies. And I was able to basically just go up to the person that was teaching mobile home parks and go, oh my God, I have this deal on my desk right now. I really want to do it. And I think I can pull it together, but there's just subtle nuances with the property type because I've never gone into this particular property type before. Are you able to help us out? And then he basically just goes, yeah. And I go, okay, just so you know, I'm going to be a little needy, but I'm also willing to pay. What's your rate? I'm very straightforward usually when it comes to business. And then he just goes, well, I mean, I've taken on private clients and this is my usual rate. And so back then in 2013, I believe we were paying him $500 an hour. And so it was considered a lot. However, yet looking back at some of the pitfalls that he helped us avoid, and even just confirmation again of our thought process and number and analysis, and connecting us to some of the key people that ended up being on our power team. So again, the property management company that we stayed with versus the company management company that I found and trained the new sales guy in came from this mentor. Because he goes, okay, I know somebody who has built relationships, somebody as in a property management company who has built relationships with the local oil and gas services companies. And so it's little things like that that really sped it up because, again, had I worked with the existing property management company just to save some money and train them from scratch, I may have been training somebody who didn't have the sales skills nor wanted to do that job in the first place. And so, again, time is everything, especially when you are on seller financing. The clock is always ticking, right? And so for me, it was very much that because at this point, I had already done nearly 3 dozens of lease options. Because a lot of you guys know that in my first year, I did 12 lease options right here in Edmonton. And then the second year, we expanded into Red Deer and Calgary, Alberta. And so by the end of the second year, I pretty much did almost 3 dozens of lease options. However, they were all done based on single family homes as exit strategies. It's just that I remember going to a talk one time and somebody on stage was saying, oh, you know what? We did a commercial development using rolling options. And that's actually how I first learned about rolling options, is that it's very commonly used by developers. So developers will acquire land, however, they will buy it based on rolling options. So for example, let's say if you're buying 100 acres as a developer, but you don't want to sink the money into buying all 100 acres, you want to preserve some capitals and your access to borrowing to really make sure that you do 1 acre at a time, for example, or 2 acres at a time. And so you buy it in phases so that you can have capital injections at all times so that you save yourself on borrowing costs over time. And combining that and everything that I learned and that I was doing already, this was sort of the first instinct, right? And this is why, Amit, again, going back to you, when you're like, oh, I didn't want to mention this, but I just say it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can take courses anywhere and you can be inspired anywhere. You never know when the dots are going to connect. And one of my favorite people of all time is Jim Rohn. He was Tony Robbins' teacher or mentor. And one of the analogies that he had was literally, so many of us were like a combination lock. Okay, you can go through life having, let's say you're a 4-digit code, you're a 4-digit code lock. You can go through life being very successful and being very smart and good at something. However, if you only constantly are operating with having the first 3 codes and missing the last one, it is always going to be very difficult to unlock your full potential. And so you never know at what point you're going to come across that program, that class, that conversation, that presentation that gives you that last code where everything just clicks. And so that's basically what happened. And like I said, honestly, looking back though, I mean, you can do the math, right? $500 an hour, $60,000. I think that's what, 120 hours we paid for altogether. And really, I would say looking back, about half of that was just him on the phone. Not even this. I didn't do technology like this, just on the phone and going through our thought process and confirming, yep, yep, yep. Once in a while, he'll go, what about this? Have you thought about that? However, it's those things at that point that really created the ultimate success that we had. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay, I think I see Naga, right? With your hand up.
Yeah, I have more like a question around the mindset.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is all on the, like, you are working with a lender, I would say, like, let's say, who works with investor groups and things. But how is the lender's mindset when they're working with somebody who's starting off fresh, or like, who's not seasoned yet? So how do lenders look at the investor at that point?
Yeah, so great question, Naga. And in case you didn't know, what Treasure Talent Academy wants to accomplish over time is we want to become an accredited institution, because nobody in this industry in the history of time has done that. So what that means is you'll basically be able to present your curriculum as part of your credentials. Okay, no different than graduating from Harvard, for example. If you don't have the experience, they know you've got the skills, and they know that how you're trained is very well structured. And this is why I said we have literally North America, if not globally, the largest training curriculum just on real estate investing alone right now. And so the idea is back then, because like I said, the seller, even the seller who was not into financial education or investing, had heard of Robert Kiyosaki and was a big fan of Robert Kiyosaki. And that somehow bought me the credit. Right. And so again, in most places that you go to, when I put down, okay, I invested in myself, in my education, they automatically go, well, this guy is not just a buyer. This guy is actually an investor. And like I said, I also included the deals and references when I was applying for mortgages along with my partners. Okay. So, I mean, I was only 31 years old at the time, by the way. And my partners were in their 40s. And so on paper, it looked a little bit better. And yet, it was just collectively, all of us were educated, because literally it wasn't this particular deal, I'll be honest. However, I've had other mortgage brokers that literally said, tell me more about the education you got. Because you got to remember, this is why you work with mortgage brokers, because mortgage brokers, they want to get to know your story, your journey, so they can vouch for you. And so I was able to go, okay, first of all, I took this course and I executed it. This is the strategy, and this is the result. And I was able to put that on my resume, so to speak, or in my portfolio, right? And then the fact that I also mentioned, I hired a mobile home park specialist as a mentor or as a consultant. Again, everything that we did made the lender, created the confidence for the lender, because they go, these guys think and operate differently. They're not coming to me and go, okay, this is how much money we have. What's the best rate you have? You know what I mean? We presented a case where we are acquiring basically a business. Like mobile home parks, at the end of the day, looking back, it was not real estate. It was a business through and through that we were buying. Okay. And so that's literally how it worked. And I think this is also why I said, I think I already had acquired the investor mindsets through my own journey, right? Through my own training, my education, and my own doing deals. At the same time, though, it was really this deal. If you remember, one of my lessons is really the growth mindset and the ROI mindset and focusing on cash flow, because the conversation, here's the other thing. The conversation that I had was always on performance and cash flow, performance and cash flow. Lenders love that. Remember, your liability is their asset. However, in order for them to see you as their asset, you got to prove to be able to debt service. Mm-hmm. And so every single conversation we had is, if I did this, if I did that, when I do this, when I do that, performance going to increase. that's going to change the cash flow. That's going to impact the service rate, debt servicing ratio. Like it's like he didn't have to retrain any of us. You know what I mean? And I know, you know, even with a lot of students within the TYT community, they've all come back and go, I just had a conversation with a realtor or with a mortgage broker and with a lawyer, whoever it is. They're like, you really know your stuff because you're trained to think and speak differently at that point. And sometimes we forget that we do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and also thank you for organizing this. Yeah,
Yeah, of course. Of course. I know so many people asked, and I'm just like, okay, let's just do a general session so that we can hit it all at once again.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Adriano, yes.
Hey, Tim, great presentation. I have a
Thank
question.
you.
I typed it in. I thought my mic wasn't working. But when you were surprised and perhaps disappointed with the lender's numbers, do you shop out your proposal or your offer to lend, or was the time crunch, or this was the best one out of all of them?
Well, so here's the thing. I'm glad you asked that question, actually. It wasn't the best rate we got. However, it was the lowest fees and it was the fastest close. And so at the time, all things considered, that's what we wanted and that's what we got. And so that's the thing, because, you know, same idea, right? From a value standpoint, it's not how much it's going to cost you, it's how much it's going to make you. And all things considered, we knew that this was going to be the best lender to work with because we also had 2 more parks coming in at the same, you know, basically the exact same business model. And they were also the only ones that said, yep, we're ready to back the other 2 based on the same application. Whereas the other lenders that our broker presented to, they were like, nope, because it's 3 separate titles, we are going to do requalifications when the time comes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it was the best overall, yeah.
It was the best overall, not the cheapest, however, best overall.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Happy to answer. Like, I don't know if we're gonna have to do a part 3 now, but anything else?
Hi,
I'll slip in
Tim.
another. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Kevin.
So- I'm just amazed that to hear from your experience. You said back then you did like 3,000 of lease options, or like 36 lease options in single family homes, and you jumped from that to this mobile park. That's really amazing. It's really mind blowing. I have no idea how you just go apart.
To be
deal with it.
completely honest, thank you, first of all. To be completely honest, it was just that sheer desire to go into the US. Because honestly, though, at that time, for some funny reason, because I was already doing lease options a lot in Canada, so I really didn't care to look at single family homes anymore. And I also did not, come across an apartment building or complex, because that's what most people were looking at, that I wanted to jump on. And so it was one of those things where I think it was timing. And so when it came across my table, and I just also remember that even though I took the mobile home park class in Canada at the time, I'm like, there are no good mobile home parks in this country. Because again, Canadians, our lifestyle is quite different. And so I've looked at a few, however, none of the numbers really made sense. And so when this happened, it was very much like, I really want to do this and I really want to make this work. And so it came down to, how can I make this happen? And yeah, and like I said, and one of the lessons literally was teamwork makes the dream work, because I also like this partner, we actually met at one of the creative financing courses before, and we exchanged contact information, and he already told me that he's been wanting to venture down into the US as well. And he was from Winnipeg, actually. And I said, yeah, I also want to, however, what have you looked at? Right. So we just build that relationship. And then out of nowhere, I woke up one morning to a text going, have you checked your email yet? I sent you something, take a look now, it's urgent. And I'm like, okay. And that's literally how how it started. And so, yeah, I mean, I just felt like I wanted to do something big and something different. And so, yeah, I think in a way, this was one of those career defining moments for me as an investor. And a lot of people have asked me, would you do something like this again? And these days I will say, no, I will not personally. However, I will coach somebody and mentor somebody to do this if this is something they want to do. Okay. Simply because it's not an asset type that I want to do. That's all. And so for those of you who are in TYT, you understand my philosophy, S&P. It's not a property type that I think makes sense for where we are right now in a career anymore. So yeah. Oh, Kevin, did you know how we were able to do nearly 36, actually over 36 lease options in 2 years?
No.
No? Okay. I guess you haven't heard that story yet, because I do share this from time to time, and sometimes I forget like where I've shared this at. And so remember, Edmonton, right? Oil and gas, and used to live in Vancouver like you. So before we moved to Edmonton in 2009, we moved, right? Does everybody remember what happened in Vancouver beginning of 2010? The Winter Olympics. The Winter Olympics. Okay, so all of a sudden, many of you are going, oh yeah, that's right. We forget that we hosted Olympics in Vancouver. And so what happened was, I think this was about summertime 09. Like one day I came home from work and I got a little letter in my mailbox, and it says, we will rent your condo for, I think they were saying $2,000 to $4,500 a month. Okay, and this was 2009. I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit back then in Burnaby, and the going rent was about $1,600. So guess what I did? I called. And so a lady showed up. I was like, so what is this about? At this point, I'm like, this sounds a little scammy. And I shared this with my coworkers, and they're like, sounds a little scammy. And I'm like, okay, well, but it piqued my interest. So I called, and basically, long story short, they were a relocation agency that was looking for accommodations, because in my little mind, I mean, Olympics, they stay at hotels. No, they were actually renting condos, apartment buildings for media people, for reporters, for athletes, their trainers, their coaches, their entire team and their support, everybody, right? Again, no different than an investor. One investor could have a giant team of 12 people behind it if you add it all up. And so one athlete could potentially bring 10, 20 more people with them on this journey. And so, yeah, they said, we will pay for you to move out your furniture, because we're going to move our stuff in. We'll pay for storage during that time, and then we'll pay for everything to be moved back in when we're done with it. And we'll usually sign a 3-month contract minimum. Okay. And so again, in my mind, if I can rent out, because they told me that they would actually rent our place for, I believe, $2,800. Okay. And like I said, fair market rent was $1,600. It was $1,200 more. And so I was thinking, even if I had to go and rent someplace else for like 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, it's worth it. And that rent is probably going to be like $1,200, $1,500. So I won't rent something as nice, because I was living in a brand new building too. And I could bank the difference. And so anyways, long story short, so I came to Edmonton, started still working, learned this, heart attack number 3, and then started, doing my mentorship and started to do the deals. And then all of a sudden, one day I just went, hang on a second. Again, like I said, you never know when you're going to get inspired. So as I was doing lease options, I kind of realized very quickly the quality of the tenant buyers, and a lot of people have heard me say this, whether I'm teaching the course or doing the webinar, is the quality of your lease option deal basically is 100% directly related to the quality of your tenant buyers. And so in my mind, I kept thinking, how can I find the best tenant buyers? And all of a sudden I went, what about I turn this into a relocation kind of service? And so for those of you who know how to execute lease options properly, is you know, there's the initial option consideration, there's the ability to afford the monthly payments, and, you know, there's the ability to qualify for the mortgage at the end of the day. So based on income credit and down payment, as we were saying, one of my soft spots is for immigrants, because I'm an immigrant myself with this strategy. And so what I was thinking is, okay, well, I was still working at the Yellow Pages. And what that also means is I got to see a lot of different clients in a lot of different industries. And then at this point, I'm thinking, hey, I remember having conversations with like oil and gas services companies that they were constantly having to hire people in. And a lot of the times, a lot of these workers, this is their opportunity to grow roots and become immigrants and become Canadian citizens. And so long story short, I just kind of started going down literally the Yellow Pages, company by company. I cold called every single one of them, was talking to the HR departments as much as I could. And my questions would be, curious, are you guys growing your workforce? Yes or no? If it's a yes, the next question is, do you hire workers from overseas? Yes or no? If it's yes, you know, it's like that tree diagram. If it's a yes, then I'll go, okay, well, what kind of workers do you typically hire? Because no offense, I didn't want them to go, well, we're just hiring for general laborers. I wanted them to go, yeah, you know what? We actually hire a lot of mid to high level engineers to come in and supervise projects. So they're usually paid $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and they get a relocation bonus. They get initially the first 6 months, 12 months, some companies was basically subsidizing their rent too, because it's cheaper for them to pay $4,000 a month for these guys to rent a place than to put them up in hotels, right? And so all that, I'm going, huh, okay. So a lot of these guys, they get a signing bonus. That can turn into their initial option consideration. They get first year of rent paid, some of them up to $4,000 a month. These people were basically buying $500,000 houses. Again, $500,000 is 10 years ago was, you know, on the mid to high end, right, in Edmonton, because average home prices 11, 12 years ago was about $350 in Edmonton. So these were, you know, the nicer single family detached 3-bedroom, 2.5 baths, fenced in double or triple car garage, just very typical but nice single family homes. I mean, Carrie, you can vouch for that as well. And Kevin, you know the market because your in-laws are here, right? And so I basically just designed this proposal and I went down the Yellow Pages and I scheduled meetings with them, to whoever that would talk to me. Like I probably call like, I don't know, 200 different companies, and about just 20 something talk to me, like not even 10%. I know a lot of people said they would have given up after the first 10. However, for me, I was like, I'm just always curious. And at this point, I was like free already. So I'm like, what do I do with my time? I might as well, you know, test my own theory. So once again, it's one of those things. And yeah, all I had at the end of the day was 7 companies, 6, I don't remember now, 6 or 7 companies that said yes. So how we structured it was that in their offer letter to hiring these people, I wanted to make sure that they have a signing bonus that became their IOC. And obviously their workers had the option, okay? So when they make the offer to hire these people, they say, you can take the signing bonus. You can also look, we will also put you up in a hotel for the first 30 days, some 15 days. And then after that, we're gonna give you anywhere between $3,200 to $4,000 a month, up to 12 months for rent. And then it's up to you, okay? And then, so what happened was, basically when they were making offers, they also attached a proposal and said, or alternatively, if you have the desire to stay in Canada and we are going to be sponsoring you for your PR, for your Maple card, here is potentially another way for us to set it up for you. So that's how it worked. And, you know, when I had high income earners as tenant buyers, like I had a reputation in the industry back then that like people were lining up for my deals, literally, because they knew that most of these guys are high income earners from the get-go, and their money, their initial option consideration directly came from their employers, and they have the intention to stay in the country, and they would bring their families in. So that's how I, kind of combine that. So once again, I mean, it's not just lease options. It's not just rent to own. It was very much just, like I got inspired somewhere or based on personal experience. And I'm like, let's see if this works. So
Do you
Yeah.
think this method still works right now?
I think this method still works. I believe so. Yeah. Because over the years I've had, and that's why these days you don't see us doing advertising for this particular strategy. People always ask, so where are your tenant buyers coming from these days? It still comes from the people that we worked with from years ago. Once in a while, they'll still call and go, are you still doing this? I'm like, of course we are. So
My other question is, so from what I know is your resource back then was all in Canada and probably mostly in Edmonton. So how were you able to fundraise for this huge deal, trailer park deals in the US?
within my community. It
Wow.
was within my community. And in all fairness, a lot of it came from the investors that I was already working with for our lease option portfolio. Because most of my investors, they were also high income earners. And so when I approached them, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, going to the US, fine. But then again, I already had a track record with them, right? And so this is why you've heard me say things like in the beginning, I would do an 80-20 split. They would take 20%, they would take 80%, I would take 20%. These days I have money partners, they will say, I'm okay taking 20%. Because again, over time, and I don't mean like return, it just means that the entire pot, right? Over time, you will build the reputation and people would rather have safe income coming in rather than gambling. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ian. I have to say, today feels like you're speaking in another language to me. I took some courses. Like, what were you talking about? What was that? What was that term again? But totally amazing. It's really eye-opening. It's like, as for some seminars, to be truth be told, some will feel like broken records. It's like maybe I should do something else with my time. But today it's just totally amazing. Thank you, Tim.
I appreciate that. But then again, if you look at it all, it's really, I mean, you've taken all these strategy courses already, right? This is raising funds, that, like I said, this is BRRRR, this is income properties, this is everything that you've done already. It just, we're putting it all together in one big deal now.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else? Any other questions? I think, yeah. Adriano, I know you were going to say something else. Maybe you're good.
Yeah, you actually answered it as part of the answer. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again. I hope I've kept you company for a couple of hours here. And any questions, my email is really straightforward, tim@trustyourtalent.ca. So reach out anytime, okay? So anyways, have a great night and enjoy your Canada Day long weekend if you get a long weekend. Okay, night everybody.